Welcome to Fool's Ball, where everything's about fools and balls. To the left of me, as always, is Neckbeard, and to the right of me is Chief Greengrass. And today, we're going to do our draft review. Neckbeard, tell the people, how is this draft review different than your typical draft review?
We don't do grades. I hate this ABC stuff where it just doesn't take into context like how much they're going to help the team. So we're going to do something a little bit different. We'll explain it. But we are not going to do ABCD because we are the ADHD generation and we want it to be a little bit different.
Also, we're only doing round 1 through 4, Dave. Why is that true?
Well, anything that you draft in the first 4 rounds, they should be starting the next 2 to 3 years. Anything after that better be on special teams. Otherwise, you screwed up the first 4 rounds and you're going to be looking for a new job within the next year or two, realistically.
That's awesome. And here we are with the NFL draft review. We do it a little bit different here. Neckbeard, can you give us a rundown of how the foosball draft system works?
Yeah, so we're all about the mutant football here, so we did a little bit different. So the max a player can get is 3 points. So those points are based off, did you feel a need? Was it a good pick at that spot? Does that player have raw talent? Are they just an overall great player? There's going to be a lot of that, obviously. But then you can get negatives if you maybe drafted too high or you ignored a position of need that was right there or you way overdrafted a player. So, again, the most you can get is 3. So we used Atlanta's example here. Player like Jalon Walker, right? Perfect for filling a need, amazing talent, great pick at that spot. So he got 3, whereas James Pierce got a little bit of a ding because they had to trade up to get him because we took into factor trades, we took into factor injuries, that sort of thing. So again, guys, just rounds 1 through 4. Round 5 through 7, most of the time it's dumb luck, even if the player makes the team.
That's super cool. So we're going to go through all the divisions. And you even ranked all the divisions, Neckbeard, which is hilarious. So we're going to go and like completely deconstruct the NFL draft, who won, who lost. And, because we were at the NFL draft, obviously the real loser was Dave Greengrass. But we'll get to that in a bit. So Neckbeard, take us through the slides here. Let's go team by team and deconstruct this draft.
Absolutely. So one more thing is, again, we're considering rounds 1 through 4, and there's a very specific reason why we do that. Greengrass mentioned it earlier, how 5 through 7 is mostly special teams, but there's another reason based on coordinators that we kind of focus on 1 through 4. Chief, why is that?
Because we find that about a third of the offensive and defense or the offense and defensive coordinators, they only last about 3 years in the league. They get promoted to head coach or they get fired, they get demoted. So a system's only going to be in place for 3 years at the most, realistically. So
we really want to focus on players that are going to jump in and affect the team right away. So let's go to the first slide. Unfortunately, it's our division, guys. It is the NFC North. We ranked them last out of all the divisions. Maybe we're brutal, maybe we're haters, but man, I was really disappointed with pretty much all of these teams' drafts. So let's start with the Bears. We gave them a 6.5, again, based on the first 4 rounds. Doug Hype, why did we give him a 6.5? What do you see here?
I mean, look at that picture there. You've got the Chicago Bear, you got the shades, it's Dizka style. We are at the draft, okay?
The
Bears. Me and Dave are at the draft, right? And the thing that's really funny is that we were there to listen to the first round pick. We all thought it was the tight end from Penn State because he's got the Mick Ditka vibes, amazing blocking, backfield action, split him out wide, whatever you want with this guy. He's just like a tough son of a gun. And then they announced the
perfect.
Pick. Yeah, and then they announced the pick, and then this is what you saw. This is what was next to me. Was a Bears fan reaction to the NFL draft, boiling rage when he heard Loveland's name instead of the Penn State tight end. And that's kind of how the draft went. Then they drafted a wide receiver that they probably didn't really need. And then they did go offensive tackle and defensive tackle, but they avoided stuff that they needed. They picked guys that they could have had better value there. And, from our perspective of being super draft experts, that they only get a 6.5, which is which is pretty below average.
Pretty lame for considering how high their picks were. Now, Burden might be amazing, Loveland might be amazing, but they got a lot of holes to fill in that team. And, the Bears fans are going to convince themselves they're both going to be Hall of Famers, but
No.
we gave them kind of a poor grade. What do you think, Chief?
Surrounded by 200,000 people, 95% of which are Packer fans. Every time that we made a pick, they were laughing their derrieres off. So, yeah.
Hey, you got the Ben Johnson offense. You got to get those weapons. You might score 25 and give up 28, which is going to happen. All right, let's move over to the Lions. Now, they didn't have a ton of picks. They traded up to get Tesla in the third. So we mostly based that off of the trade for Tesla, Tate Ratledge, and Tyleik Williams. But we only gave him a 4 here. Hype. Why do you think we gave him such a low grade?
Well, the thing is that the Lions, they needed some edge rush. They needed a lot of help on the defense, and they went with a D tackle and a guard and then a wide receiver. It just didn't seem like they filled needs on their team. And a 4, yeah, that's pretty bad, man. And who knows, maybe the Lions turn around and laugh at all of us, but
yeah,
this draft was very unexpected.
I mean, the Lions do whatever the hell they want. And again, they only had 3 picks in the top first 4 rounds, guys. So remember, teams that have a ton of picks are generally going to have a higher score because they're going to have more options to help that team. And, the Lions don't give a crap what we think about them, and maybe these guys will be good. But let's move on to the Green Bay Mother-Loving Packers, the best team in the history of the world. We didn't give them a great grade either. Chief, why did we give them a 7?
No. Well, you have a team that has 4 wide receiver 2s, so they went out. They hopefully got their number 1 in Matthew Golden, so we gave them good marks for that. Then they went out and they got a tackle, which they have a lot of offensive linemen.
Yeah,
I think you can never have enough doubt and never have enough depth, but it seemed like they could have gone edge, could have gone corner, and then they go right back to a wide receiver in the 3rd round. So they just weren't addressing their needs. Needed more cornerbacks. Fortunately, they went for Sorrell, and edge was a nice story in the draft, but they probably needed to address that a little bit earlier, so that's why we only gave them a 7, which made me happy.
Yeah, and we were trying to be as fair as possible. I like Sorrell too, but taking a tackle and a wide receiver that maybe will contribute in the next 2 years, right? That are projects. I mean, it's kind of hard to give them a great grade. I don't dislike the picks, but I think other teams just did a lot better. So there's your 7. On to the Vikings. So, yeah, I was pretty harsh on the last time, and I continue to stay harsh. I think Jackson's a good player, but they way overdrafted him, and they had other players there that they could have taken. Taking a wide receiver with the next pick when you don't have a lot of picks, take a wide receiver, which you don't really need, and there's other guys there. And then, finally taking a D tackle at 139. I just think the Vikings overlooked so many positions of need on defense in those first 2 picks that, and they only had a couple. They only had a few picks, so they weren't going to score that high anyway, and they happened to screw those picks up. So they finished 30 seconds. Wah, wah. Purple incarnations of Satan at last. So, all right. So the NFC North sucked balls. Let's just say it. They sucked. The whole division sucked. Nobody did great. 32nd, 29th, 25th, 21st. And guys, this is the thing. We did it by divisions just to see what's your main goal every year. Win your division. Yes, there's teams that aspire to the Super Bowl. There's teams that want to make the playoffs, but you win your division, you get in the playoffs. That's your main goal. Win your division. How did you do against your division teams? Well, the NFC North all kind of stuck. So I guess that's good for all of us or bad. Who knows?
But
all right,
all did great. 3 teams got to the playoffs, and then they all continued to stink. So this will be a long slide into something.
All right, so the next division that also didn't do too great was the NFC West. So we had the Cardinals. They finished 27th overall based on our grading system. Doug Hype, you had the Cardinals. Why do you think we gave them a 6 there?
Well, there was a lot of people on the board like cornerbacks, wide receivers, more dynamic guys. They took Nolan, who seems to be, was a kind of a darling of the draft. But they overlooked a little bit of issues. Then they went for a linebacker. Yeah, I don't know. The Cardinals, they need excitement. They need dynamic playmaking. And I think that they kind of passed up on a lot of potential in this draft.
Yeah, they had a lot of picks too. So 6 is pretty low for all those picks. And they stuck to defense kind of like the Bills did, but maybe took players that were a little too soon or didn't really fit what we thought they needed. But again, that's our opinion. So let's move on to the Los Angeles Rams. Now, they traded out of the first, so obviously they're not going to have as much draft capital here, but we can't give them points for who they pick next year because we don't know who they're going to pick. So they're going to have less options for points here. but they got Terrence Ferguson, Josiah Stewart. So why do we give the Rams a 4 for that?
Well, Terrence Ferguson, they needed a tight end. They have their two wide receivers. They're going to be able to get a lot of the targets. They're going to get a lot of target share. You need to have a third weapon. They already have the running back he's a battering ram. He's beautiful. Doesn't help the passing game too much. This is trying to get him the third option. From a raw talent standpoint, we don't really feel it's there, but hopefully he is. Oregon has a good offense, so hopefully that's able to help. But otherwise, you get Josiah Stewart, the edge out of Michigan, which is all right.
He's okay. I mean, the Rams did fine. They didn't have a lot of options to make their team that much better in the draft, and it shows. So I'm not going to give them a B or any of that garbage, right? They finished 31st. They traded.
And Jarquez Hunter,
Go ahead.
And last year they got who should be a good running back in the as their backup. So going running back again. Hopefully he's just going to be a good special teamers for you. But if that's in the 4th round, it's a 1 round too early for a special teamer. So didn't
agreed. So they deserve their 4. All right, let's move on to the 49ers. 8.5. So they did green. They were above average here, 13th overall. Now they went defensive crazy with Mikael Williams, Alfred Collins, Nick Martin to start. So we graded them a little bit higher. Plus they had a good amount of picks. Why did we give them an 8.5 hype?
Well, they did a decent job. Mikael Williams, depending on how you grade the players, could be a really good defensive end for them. Some people had him going even higher in the draft. They just took solid picks, and they had a decent amount of them. They had 4 picks in the top 4, 5 picks in the top 4, which kind of helped them out. This grading system will reward you if you have more picks. So I think that's kind of their draft was a little bit above average, and they had 5 picks.
Yep. Yeah, they did okay. Maybe not any out of the park. And that kind of moves on to the Seahawks, who had a bunch of picks to start the day, traded back in a lot of them or traded out. Ended up with Zabo, and Eminwari, who I both think were great picks. I think they did well. We'll see what happens to Milroe. Not a huge fan of Arroyo, so I didn't really give him a huge grade there. But yeah, I mean, they had a bunch of picks. They traded out. They ended up with only 3. They still scored pretty well, but 7 points overall leaves you at 24. So the NFC West not doing a ton in our estimation to improve their scenario. All right, let's move on to the next one. So the NFC East, hilariously enough, now we did not do this ranking, guys, by division when we did the points. We went team by team, right? In pretty much alphabetical order. And it just so happens that every single team in the NFC East ended up with a 7. So there we go. So I'll start with the Giants. I love the Abdul Carter pick, gave him a bunch of points for that. I discounted them on Jackson Dart a little bit because I think they way overdrafted him and they had to trade a first. But hey, quarterbacks are worth a lot. He's not going to do anything for him this year. Maybe next. We'll see. Darius Alexander, I thought was a good pick as well. And Cam Scottaboo was, I think, a decent pick for the team. So let's move on to the Commanders. We also gave them a 7. Chief, what do you think we gave them a 7?
They, despite making the playoffs, looking strong in the playoffs, they still had a lot of need. So it was pretty easy for them with the 3 picks that they had to score good. Josh Connolly, he's one of the few left tackles in the league, so got points for that. Protect your franchise quarterback. They needed the DB. Trey Amos looks like he should have some potential, should be able to help them with their secondary. And, you need another wide receiver. They have 1 solid wide receiver. It's good to try to develop other options. Jalen Lane, we think he could show some decent potential, help out their young QB.
Yeah. So, and again, they didn't have a lot of picks. So 7 for only having 3 picks isn't actually pretty good, but that leaves you at 20. Now let's go to the Cowboys at 18. They had a few picks. And again, Alexander Ignatius, our free temp that works for us, that makes these presentations, doesn't always get things right. Sometimes things are a little off. But again, our free temp, we call him AI for short, but his name's Alexander Ignatius. He might make a mistake, so we apologize if it's not perfect. Leave it in the comments how much you hate him. On to the Cowboys, Tyler Booker, major overdraft, great player, but got some points for that. Ezra Rocco, I thought was a great pick. Siobhan Rell, I thought was a great pick, but they didn't have a ton in the early part of the draft either. So they finished with a 7, right about average, a little below average, but not a bad draft for the Cowboys. Just didn't knock it out of the park in my estimation. So they ended up with a 7, like everybody else. Now on to the Eagles, who we did think had a pretty decent draft, but not a lot of options in the top 4. What do you think about that, Chief?
Well, I had Jihad Campbell going a lot earlier just for the versatility. I think he's a real solid for them. They needed last year they drafted a couple of cornerbacks, so getting a safety there to help them out with their secondary. You have 4 solid men in the front, then who will able to get the rush on the quarterback, get some safety help there to help out those corners. It's pretty good. D tackle Ty Robinson. We'll wait and see, but all in all, you can never really question their GM. He's done pretty fantastic for them.
He's done a great job.
Just kind of surprised I didn't really see anyone out of Georgia.
Hey, I mean, they're picking 32nd guys, and they're still getting a 7 with teams that are picking in the top 5. So, I think they did pretty well. Just because you have a lower score doesn't mean you did terrible. But again, this is about how much you're helping your team in the next 2 years, right? Okay, so we're moving on to the AFC South. This is our blonde hairstyle division. We got a little fun here. So we're going to start out with the Houston Texans, who finished with a 28th overall. We weren't a huge fan of what they did because they kind of double dipped on a lot of stuff they maybe didn't need. So why do we give them a 5, guys, for Houston?
Well, Higgins is not a terrible pick there. A lot of people had him further down in the draft, and the Texans needed a lot of O-line help. I don't really know if they needed a ton of wide receiver help there. And I believe, didn't they trade down also? So they only had how many picks in the first 4? 3 picks, I think it is.
They had 4
picks there.
They had 5.
Sorry, 5. Yeah,
5.
Sorry,
2 seconds, 2/3, and a 4th.
Yeah,
they did a lot of movement, but when they traded away their left tackle, and they had gaps all over the offensive line, and their only response there is Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota. He's a mammoth tackle, but he reminds me a lot of Philip Lodeholt, who in Viking lore, he was a giant man who could never move. He could never pass block. He's not going to protect a young quarterback if you get a good rush.
Yeah, we penalized the Titans pretty bad for passing on offensive linemen, let's be honest. And I think rightfully so, to be honest. They traded back, I get it, but you desperately needed offensive linemen, and they were on the board. So you decided not to do it, and we're going to penalize you. All right, so let's move on.
Receivers are going to be awesome.
Yeah, but let's move on to the first overall pick team, the Tennessee Titans and the lovely Dolly Parton. Doug Hype, we gave him 11.5, so we gave him a pretty good score, 6 overall. Why do we think the Titans did so well?
Well, partly because they had 5 picks, so they had a lot of points to rack up there.
Yep.
But first of all, Cam Ward, great pick. I mean, it's the obvious pick there, but you really need to get a quarterback here. And they got pretty much the only quarterback in the draft that seemed like he had all-pro talent, all-pro arm. They also needed an edge there. They got Oladejo, and they got a safety there. So, you're going to need to get that defensive line going. The Tennessee Titans defense was, not super great last year. And this stacked up pretty well for them. They got 6. They're rated 6, partially because they had, I think, extra picks there, but they did a pretty good job.
I think so. And we're all big Shamari DK fans here. Go Badgers, even though he transferred out. All right. Jacksonville Jaguars finished 17th. Not terrible. We all love the Travis Hunter trade, but they did give up some capital. Ended up with the first 2/3, 2/4. So they finished kind of mid-table for us. Why do we give them a 7.5, guys?
Travis Hunter is basically 2 draft picks in 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we gave Travis Hunter the highest score we could give. And Tima Molau, I think, is a great pick for them as well. Millam, maybe. Tootin, I mean, they had a lot of running back depth, but, they get some points here and there. But, they finished about average, but at the top, they did, I think, as best they could with Travis Hunter. So, but overall, improvement on the team.
Very top-heavy draft there because they got 7.5,
very top
but
heavy.
they had 5 picks there,
Yeah, I would say very top-heavy for the Jaguars. Not a terrible one, but let's move on to one that was terrible, the Indianapolis Colts. Now, we did like the Tyler Warren pick, but after that, not so much. And
we do not like the Tyler Warren pick. He should not have been there. He should have been drafted by the Bears.
Yeah, and we got Leslie Knope looking at the disjointed Colts, and there's half a Colt symbol there or half a Colt logo because they are a broken franchise. But we didn't say that. So Tyler Warren's a good pick. They did okay, but why do we give him a 4.5, guys?
Tyler Warren, fills a need. His raw talent is fantastic. but again, we couldn't give them a point for being a good pick just because they already have 3 explosive options on offense at wide receiver. They already have Jonathan Taylor. If your quarterback can't make those work, it doesn't make any sense to draft somebody else when you can solidify that defense. Maybe, re-solidify the interior line. You lost a couple of guys on the interior too. So, it seems like it's a Hail Mary right now for a staff. Hopefully they're around next year. They drafted an edge in the second round last year. They took a defensive edge out of UCLA last year with their 15th pick in the first round, helping to solidify that. So, it's a good pick, raw talent. Not sure that it helps in need. I understand that they lost one of their edges to Chicago in the offseason, but I think that could have been spent better elsewhere. They did need a cornerback from Minnesota. He fills a need, not a good pick. Question his talent. Minnesota DB, sorry, just not a big fan. And then Iowa State, Jalen Travis, fourth round pick. We'll see from there. But we weren't really thrilled with anything there that they took as far as what their needs.
Yeah, and they didn't do great. And guys, Alexander Ignatius really effed up this one because Tumalau got drafted to pretty much every team but the Titans. So we apologize for that. But he actually is on the Colts, everybody. He actually is on the Colts. AI just wanted to put him on every freaking team in the South. Overall, though, we don't think the South did that terrible, but they didn't do that great. So they finished 5th. All right, let's move on to the divisions that start to do a little better. So we're going to do the AFC North, and we'll start with the Baltimore Ravens, who I think did a really good job with their picks. They finished 12th overall in our rankings, or 9th, 9 total points. Malachi Starks knocked it out of the park. Mike Green has some issues potentially, so he's a great player. We dinged him for that, but I liked Emory Jones as well. So they only had so many points they could get, but I thought they did a great job. All right, now let's move on to the Bengals. They finished with a 7. Now they had his name's actually Shamar Stewart. They took number 1, but we gave him 7 points overall, guys. They finished 22nd. Why do you think we gave him that score?
We like the Shamar Stewart. They have the need. They have their Hendrickson, their DN all-world, who trying to make him happy, but he might not be there next year, so you better fill it in right now. Demetrius Knight, they need help at linebacker. He should help as well. Might be a little bit of a minor overdraft going linebacker in the second round. Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia, an offensive lineman. They need to help Joe Burrow. He's amazing, but eventually you can break him if you have him, you don't address his line. And then they went back with Barrett Carter, went to another linebacker out of Clemson. It's a need, trying to fill the need, but maybe the talent isn't there, but at least they're trying to plug in. But they probably should have done more on the offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. They didn't do bad, but they could have done a little more. 7's not a bad score. A lot of teams kind of in that area, so they did about average. Let's move on to Cleveland Browns. Shocked everybody, trading out for Travis Hunter and taking his best friend out of Colorado. But we gave them a really good score here, 5th overall for the Cleveland Browns. Quite a good draft for their team. Chief, why did we give them such a good score?
They got a disruptor to go on the interior part of that defensive line, which is really going to help out the best defensive edge player that there is in the league. That's going to be a dynamic tandem that they have there. Schlesinger helped to solidify right behind that. I love that pick. They've been looking for the next Nick Chubb. He's been an amazing story. He's been fantastic for their team, but a man can only have so many ACL tears. We love you, Nick Chubb, always, forever. You're going to be a great. Hopefully Quinshon Judkins is able to help fill in that role. And I like that they came back in 2 rounds later and go Dylan Sampson to help solidify, because Cleveland needs to be a rushing attack. They need to be smash mouth. That's been the identity of the franchise. Harold Fannin, a lot of people gave, they graded them lower just because he went to Bowling Green. He didn't go to the big school. But at the same time, I went back and I want to redo his grade simply because of the fact, when you look at his stats, his last year when he played at Penn State week 2, he got 11 receptions, 137 yards, 1 touchdown. He got 12 and a half yards per route. The next week at Texas A&M, which has a lot of guys who are drafted, he got 8 receptions, 145 yards, and a touchdown. The week after, lower competition, but still 12 receptions, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. The man, 2 games against big competition, he showed up, goes back to lower competition, and he still shows. So I think that there's a lot more on the bone than people are giving him credit for. I think he's a fantastic pick. You already have David Njoku, but tight end, maybe give him 2-3 years. We said you don't give him longer than that, but that's a beautiful transition between getting away from Joku's contract. Eventually they'll get a quarterback next year. And I think Harold Fanning could be pretty explosive in 2 years.
Yeah, and they get Dylan Gabriel as well. Shador they add later. I know that's not the top 4 rounds, but
We only talk about the first 4 rounds.
that's right. They double dipped in a lot of areas, which I think is smart. I mean, the Packers have done it in the past. It's like, hey, they got a lot of holes to fill. They got a lot of picks. Might as well try to fill that gap. I thought the Browns did a great job. And getting that first round pick next year, we gave them some kudos for that, little extra points, right? Just like we did for the Rams. But yeah, 5th overall for Cleveland. Great job. All right, now on to Pittsburgh, that everybody thought they should have drafted a quarterback. I told you they wouldn't. I'm glad they didn't. They took Derek Harmon, which it still says they need a quarterback here, but they don't. Derek Harmon, I thought was a great pick. A lot of people seem upset about it. I think that's a fantastic pick for them. Cam Johnson is also a great pick. I think he feels like kind of like a Steelers player, maybe just because he played at Iowa. They said they wear the same colors. And Jack Sawyer, I thought was about a 4th round talent, and people had him in the 2nd, the 3rd. I think the 4th was the right place to take him. And I think with his skill set, I think Pittsburgh's defense is absolutely great for them. So I thought, they didn't have a lot of picks, but I thought they did really well, and they finished a little above average here at 14th overall. So not bad for the AFC North, finishing 4th. Now let's move on to the NFC South, who, look at that, everybody's green, a lot of green mutant hints here. We thought they did a pretty good job. So let's start with the Falcons. So Jalen Walker, great pick, perfect. Can't say anything wrong about it. James Pierce, I thought, was also a bit of a reach in the sense that they gave up a lot to get him. But, hey, they haven't had a pass rush in a long time. You got to give them props there. And then Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman, again, another team that double-dipped 2 safeties there. They really needed that help. I think that was great. I actually think the Falcons did a really good job this year. They're going to have less draft capital next year. But, hey, they're going for it. You got to respect that. 10th overall for the Falcons. All right, now let's move on to the Carolina Panthers guys who took Tet in the 1st round. Chief, we gave them 12 points, 4th overall. Why do we think they did so good?
We thought Tet was not going to – well, honestly, their first 3 picks we thought knocked everything out of the ballpark for filling a need, good picks and raw talent. They needed Tet. They needed an alpha. He's going to help out their young quarterback who took the step in the second half of the season last year. Their defense was atrocious last year, so they went back-to-back in picks for edge rushers. And we believe Nick Scorton, he's a big, bad mamma jamma. Looking at his Purdue tape, he was effective when his job was just to run forward and get the quarterback. Last year in A&M, he had to do a little bit more read, so it wasn't the same scheme. It didn't fit as well. But if he's your run forward, he's going to be dynamic. Princely, I'm not even going to butcher his name. Heard his name a lot. But he's also another dynamic edge who's going to help out their defense quite a bit. And they did so good with these picks that they felt comfortable letting Jadeveon Clowney walk. They ate some of his contract just this week. So that's showing a lot of the confidence that they have in these picks. Running back, unfortunately, their top pick last year at running back, he's already put on shelled for the year. For this following year, but they got Trevor Etienne, who should be a nice compliment to
Hubbard.
Hubbard. Yes.
Yeah.
Doug Hype's number 1 running back in Dynasty. He's
an amazing running back. He
actually
just signed a big contract.
Is a great spot for him. I mean, I think their top 4 picks were perfect. Everything they needed right when they needed it. There was a guy there to fill that need. That will probably fit that system. So, yeah, I think Carolina knocked it out of the park. That's weird to say, but they did a great job. Let's move on to the Buccaneers now. Hype, that was you. So they took Abuka. We gave them an 8, so they did a little better than most teams, but not too amazing. Why do you think we gave them a score of 8, Hype?
Well, they had some decent picks here. Abuka, we were shocked and surprised by that. So he didn't get the highest grade for that, even though he's a pretty quality wide receiver. But Benjamin Morrison falling to them is like pretty nice. He was potentially going to be like a top 10 draft pick before all of his injuries and stuff. So their draft was just like pretty decent. It wasn't amazing. An 8's it's just like a slightly above average. And it was like kind of unexpected. They did need a cornerback, but they also needed help like on the defensive line, which they took later in the draft, and David Walker and Elijah Roberts. But I'm not sure that that's going to be a big impact.
Yeah. No, and they did, again, a little above average, not a whole ton of help for next year, but not a bad thing. The fact that Morrison fell to them in the second after they took Ibuka and, left cornerbacks on the board, I think that actually helped
It
them
kind of
out
worked out
quite
for
a,
them. And
yeah,
also the
quite a bit,
draft, we knew that Golden was going to drop to the Packers when he got picked there. So they helped
right?
out they helped out like our plan.
Yeah, I think they did. Let's move on. The Saints now finished 11th. Again, not a bad draft, but they did have a ton of picks. They had a ton of picks here. Love the Kelvin Banks hit. Do not like the Tyler Shuck pick at all. Vernon Broughton's okay. Sanker's okay. I really like Danny Stutzman. I think he's going to be a very good NFL player. I think getting him in the 4th round is pretty much a steal. And Quincy Riley, not a bad player either. So the Saints more just got 8.5 based on they had just a lot of picks, and none of them were too terrible other than Shuck. But most of them were pretty good. So they did something to help the team, but they didn't necessarily knock it out of the park. They finished 8.5, though, which is enough for 11th. So just outside of the top 10. So not bad, New Orleans. All right, now let's move on to the AFC East, who finished second here. And pretty much all these teams did really well, really well. Let's start with the New Jersey Jets. We gave them a 12.5, third overall for a Jets draft pick. Were we drunk when we made these grades?
Well,
exactly.
they actually picked players that they needed, and it fit into what I had predicted. I predicted they were going to get an offensive tackle here, which they did. They got a great guy from Missouri, but they also got a tight end, and they got Thomas from Florida State dropping all the way to them in the 3rd round, who at one point was thought of as like a low 1st round draft pick, and then he kind of like ran a little bit slow. So they filled in some needs on the team here, and they got Aaron Smith from Georgia, more from Alabama at safety. So they got a lot of depth here, and they also had a lot of picks in this round. But yeah, 12.5, super high, top 3 in the draft. But I think that's the thing, is they filled a really important need that they had at offensive tackle.
Yeah, they did a really good job with Bamboo. I think Mason Taylor should be good for them. We'll see how he turns out. And Azari Thomas in the 3rd, absolute steal. That's a great pick. All right, let's move on to another one of your team's hype, the New England Patriots, who finished 2nd overall. Obviously, Bill didn't make any of these picks, but he was watching closely by his girlfriend. He was watched closely. So we gave him a 14.5 hype.
Well, they
Why
had
did
a
we
lot
give
of
him
picks.
such a good grade? A lot of picks, but I think they knocked it out. Why do you think we graded him so high?
Well, again, they took an offensive lineman, and Dave, I'm sure, will agree with me. But like, the meta in the NFL is the defensive line, but you better be able to block, because if you have a young quarterback like the Patriots do, and you're going to go up against all these teams that are investing heavy in D-line and pass rush, like, you better watch out. So they got Will Campbell from LSU, who's a total stud. And then they got a nice running back, Trevion Henderson from Ohio State, and Kyle Williams from Washington State, who a lot of people really liked a lot as a wide receiver at number 3. And he could have been a 2nd round pick there at wide receiver. A lot of people just really like him. And they got a center there in the 3rd, a safety, D tackle, a lot of depth going on there. But they really got value picks for where they were picking in the draft. They made smart picks. It just kind of fell to what they needed for their team, and kind of fits into what the Patriots are. They're going to be a team that needs a win on the offensive line, and then just cycles in running backs.
Yeah, they did a really good job.
Farmer in the 4th was huge. D-tackle out of
and
Florida State.
it says 5th
Farmer
here.
Too.
Alexander Ignatius screwed up. It says 5th, but that actually was the 4th, so those do count. They had actually quite a few players. I think Woodson's also a great pick in the 4th. I really like the Kyle Williams and Trayvon Henderson picks for them, because it gives them speed. And what have the Patriots lacked for so long is like an offensive playmaker, just somebody dynamic. And Henderson is exactly that. He's a home run hitter. And any quarterback will tell you, when you have that, it's going to help your offense so much more. So, yeah, Patriots, 2nd overall. Great job.
A lot of people had them taking a running back in the 1st round or trying to get one, but I think what they did is smart.
I like that Henderson fell to them, and they get the best, ideally the best tackle in the draft. I mean, you can't fault them for that. 14.5, absolutely deserved. On to the Buffalo Bills, who really like defense, but we gave them an 11. So why did we score them with an 11 on this pick, guys?
Oof. Well, the Buffalo Bills here, let's see, how many picks did they have in this draft? They had in the first 4 rounds.
They just had 4 basically, but
they had a bunch of 5th round picks. Yeah, but Harrison's a guy that a lot of people mocked to the Packers. He dropped all the way to 30, because some people had him going up in the 1st round.
Yep.
TJ Sanders of South Carolina and Landon Jackson in the second and third round is really going to give them some defensive help. And like all these teams are trying to build to kind of mimic the Eagles and what they did. And if you want to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs in the AFC, they got some defensive line help. They got a lot of defensive line help in the first 4 rounds, and they got a cornerback. So, and they can, it seems like they can win with any wide receiver you put on the field. So this might have been a genius draft by the Bills.
I really like this draft, and I apologize, but we missed one of the players, Deion Walker, who was taken as well, who's really good, I think. You get Landon Jackson, TJ Sanders, Maxwell Harrison. I mean, they needed so much help on that defense that I think they did a phenomenal job. So, yeah, 11, 7th overall. Great job, Buffalo Bills. Now, on to Miami, who only had 2 picks in the top 4. So the max they could get was 6, but we gave them 6. So, guys, we gave the Dolphins 6.
Yeah.
Why did we do that?
Because they got the unheralded hero of this draft, which is Kenneth Grant, the guy that made Mason Graham look good. We all agreed that Kenneth Grant was somebody that we were hoping would drop to the Packers or something along those lines. And he went 13th, which is pretty dang high for what people were predicting. And he's a monster. He's like a big anchor in there. And then they got Salvia Nea from Arizona at guard. And they need offensive line help really bad. In fact, we thought that they were going to go more offensive line in this draft, but I'm not going to hate them for going for Grant.
They needed to. And personally, I think Savania might be the best guard in this draft. I've seen him play. He is really athletic and agile and strong. And I think getting him the second is exactly what the Dolphins needed. So, yeah, they got their max points. They couldn't score a lot, 26 overall, but they did the best they could. And overall, AFC East did a really good job. They really strengthened. Now to the saddest slide of all, the division that did by far the best out of everybody, which would be the AFC West. They smoked it, guys. Every single team. I mean, the Chargers finished mid-table, but every single team did so well, and it makes me so mad that the Kansas City Chiefs did so well. I'm so upset about it. But let's start with the Broncos. They finished top 10 total points. Of course, they've got no-fly zone 2.0 now. Why did we give them a 10 on their draft, guys?
Right away in the first round when they went Jade Barron, when everyone in Green Bay was expecting them to go running back. They're like, nope, we're going to make our defense. We're going to make it from great to elite like you ain't seen. So they had that fantastic duo out there. And then they came back in the second round and they got the running back that Sean Payton wanted all along. They got R.G. Harvey, who's going to be their joker. They already had 2 other good running backs, can fit roles, but this guy should be able to be the glue and use him in a lot of different places. He's older, but again, this is why we only look for the 2-year window. You don't care about age. If you're a head coach or a GM, you're like, my job's only good for 2 to 3 years. So if it's a running back who's 25, I don't care if he's going to give me a great 2 to 3 years. That's good. I'll look for his replacement in 3 years. Hopefully I don't get a pink slip before then. So that was a fantastic pick. Pat Bryant, it had a lot of people doing this. He's not the uber athlete, but again, you kind of trust that this head coach knows what he wants, what kind of guys. And he looked at him and he says, hey, you reminded me of somebody who caught 100 passes every year when I was down in New Orleans. So he likes his guys. He likes his archetypes. He found the guys to help his young quarterback. And then, he came back, he hit edge back to back with Savion Jones, Quay Robinson. I think those are 2 fantastic. So that's going to be a stellar defense. So his quarterback doesn't need to score too much, but he also gave him 2 great tools. So that way ensure that they get 24 points a game and they're going to win a lot of games this year.
Yeah, Pat Bryant, the wide receiver from Illinois, he was kind of all over the place. Some people had him high, some people had him low, but I think he'll work pretty well in this Denver offense. He kind of reminds me a lot of some of the Saints wide receivers, the big slow guys that were successful in this type of offense. So that might actually work out pretty well. All right, let's move on to the Kansas City Jayhawks, and they got 8th overall and 11. Andy Reid's pretty happy, so happy he wanted to have
this could turn into the best draft of any team in the draft.
I mean, I'm really mad that they got potentially the best left tackle and potentially the most disruptive defensive tackle in this draft. Like, I'm really upset about it that
You're very high on Norman Lott. I know you like.
I really like him. Yeah, I mean, I know he's a specialist, but like he blows up interior offensive linemen all the time and on pass rush. And I'm terrified of what he's going to do for Kansas City. I'm really mad that he went to the
And
Chiefs.
and their defensive corner, he's been fantastic for the last 4 or 5 years. He has much of a finger on the scale as Andy Reid does for why they have all of those rings. He rotates a lot of guys out there on that defense. So being able to get somebody young who into the rotation who can get the pressure up the gut, that's how you beat Patrick Mahomes. So they're like, all right, screw you. If that's how you're going to beat us, we're going to punch you in the mouth with the same thing. So he's fantastic. And then even their 4th-round pick, Jalen Royals, we gave him the max 3 points
Yeah,
because
he's good.
Dude, all
Patrick
these guys
Mahomes does not need another guy like that.
Also, Noel Williams from California was a draft darling for a lot of people, and they took him right before the Packers picked. And
Oh yeah.
Dude, no, Kansas City knocked it out of the park, man. I'm not going to lie. A lot of these guys fell a little bit, and the Chiefs swooped them up. And, yeah, good credit to them. They have a good GM. He's been good for a lot of years. He knows what he's doing.
If Matthew Golden had not dropped to the Packers might have traded back and got a draft similar to the Chiefs because, like, it was easy to trade back in this. I mean, if you could find a trading partner, it was very tempting to trade back.
Yeah.
But it might not have been easy to find a person, but like, you could just be the pick number 32 and have an amazing draft.
Yeah, they did a great job. All right, let's move on.
There's a reason they pick 32 every year, Dougie.
Yeah, or 31.
Picking in the 20s.
31 this year. Let's 31. Come on. All right, let's move on to the Los Angeles Wolverines. The Los Angeles Chargers, who, again, we thought did pretty well. Had some good players in here. 8 points overall, kind of mid, but still did pretty well. We gave them a decent score. Why did we do that, guys?
Well, we thought they were going to go for like the Michigan guys, right? We thought they were going to be able to get like Grant or something, or maybe the tight end Loveland, but they were taken already. And now they got Amorian Hampton, who maybe he's the next LT for them. You know what I mean? This guy could be like a superstar running back for the Chargers. So, just from that alone, I think they deserve a decent grade from this draft. Harbaugh, he wants to run the ball. He wants to ground and pound and play defense.
Yeah, I think they did well. I think Trey Harris was a great pick. I think that they actually got a lot of needs, and they did pretty well. I mean, they didn't do great. They didn't do terrible. They did pretty well. They finished 15th. Now let's move on to the reason we all know the apocalypse is coming. The Las Vegas Raiders finished number 1 overall in our draft grades, and I almost don't believe it. I know
that never happens. They're always bottom 3.
Seriously, they're always awful. And now they have a new GM.
Where'd they get all these draft picks from, too?
Yeah, and honestly, I think almost every single one of these draft picks was perfect. I think Genti obviously was the right pick, not Sanders, right? He's going to be a huge talent. Beck is going to be a very good wide receiver. Darian Porter in the 3rd is an absolute steal. Caleb Rogers is going to be a good player. I think Deontay Thornton, some people are down on him. He's a bit of a deep threat specialist, but so what? Like, you need those kind of guys. I think
4th round. Raiders like speed.
Honestly, I think they deserve.
That's what the Raiders used to use their 1st-round picks on.
Yeah, exactly. The old Raiders would have taken
the Raiders showed restraint. They waited until later on.
Yeah, they would have taken him in the 1st round probably, but I got to give credit to their new GM. He did a fantastic job. I think the Raiders absolutely crushed this draft. I love.
They had a lot of picks, but they also did really well with all of them.
Yeah, I can't say they made a single bonehead pick, which is weird because that's what the Raiders do. And they just, they did a great job. So, the apocalypse is coming. The Mayan calendar was wrong. It's when the Raiders crush the draft that the world has to end because it just doesn't make any sense. So, congratulations to the Las Vegas Raiders and, of course, their new GM. He did a fantastic job, absolutely fantastic job. And the West really strengthened. This is going to be, guys, I think the most competitive division in football, much like our division was last year. The NFC North was very competitive. I could see 3 teams winning 12 games in this division. I could literally see it happening. It's a very, very good division, and they all got better. The
Chiefs could come in last place this year and then win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's just that kind of crazy.
No, the Chiefs could not win the division and win 12 games, or 11 games. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? It's possible. We've seen it happen before. I mean, Minnesota last year, the Packers finished 3rd with 11. Minnesota won 13 games. 14 games, excuse me, and finished second. So, yeah, it's this division.
And
I think
it's going to go crazy when the Raiders trade for Shedeur Sanders. So,
could happen. All right, guys. So, one last slide we want to share with you. Here's the total rankings for every single team, what their final score was, and of course, their points per pick. So, you can see obviously the way we grade these guys. If you have more picks, you're going to get a better score, but you can see the teams that actually took the most advantage. Like Vegas, still 2.43 per pick. New England 2.42 per pick. Again, max was 3 guys. Baltimore 2.25. Miami all the way over there, 2 picks, 3-0. So they did a perfect score, but they only had 2 picks. So yeah, this is the overall ranking. So instead of an A, B, C, D, E nonsense that everybody kind of feels the same, A plus B plus like this actually shows you, hey, Vegas did a ton to help their team next year versus a team like Pittsburgh or the Chargers who did a good amount but not great versus a team like Minnesota who did almost next to nothing to help their team next year. So yeah, so that's why the Foosball guys do this grading system. I know it's probably a little weird for you guys first time watching it. Again, sorry about all of our Alexander Ignatius mistakes, but roast us in the comments and talk again. Hype, how do you think we did on the overall grading?
I really like this grading a lot because it actually breaks it down into like how valuable it is per each team and doesn't just generically give like some kind of like elementary school grade. And then you can come back and see, was it true? Were you right? Were you wrong? Did this actually help? Did the player actually fulfill what you expected from them? Did they help the team? I think it's a much more constructive way. There's only one thing missing from this chart, though. Like one of the draft picks from Green Bay should be added. Ziggy from the Paul Farrington show should be added to the stats there. So it should be actually 5 picks.
5 picks for 10 overall.
For 10 overall.
Hey, that put us close to the top 10 right there.
It would make it at least top 10 draft.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, guys, that's a big thing is we're counting on how much help you're getting. Your grade isn't based on just value per player. Every single player has value. And you can see the teams per pick that did really well. And the teams like maybe New Orleans, who still finished 11th with 6 picks, but 1.42, maybe not the best draft, right? Or a team like Washington or Philadelphia, 3 picks, 2.3, maybe they did a little bit better. But does that help your team as much next year, right? So, Chief, what was your favorite team, I guess, to grade in this draft process?
Oh man, I'm going back and I'm looking at Harold Fannin for the Browns. They did a lot of good things there. If we'd given them, we got them for raw talent. We didn't give them for good pick or fill in a need. But if we give them the 2 additional points, we would see Cleveland shooting up from 12. They jump all the way up to the number 3 slot.
Yeah.
So I think that the trade that they made, going from the 2 to the 5, I think it was great. I love the process that we had where we looked at pick one down to 200 or 1 down to like 130. We did them in order. We didn't do them by team.
We went pick by pick, not by team, not by division. Yep.
It wasn't until the very end that we got to see, because when I see the final results, I'd want to let's say and just, the North, of course we suck because all of our teams made the playoffs other than my team. So, there weren't as many needs to fill. And then when you see the dynamic between, the North, which had the best record last year by division, and then you see the AFC West, how all of their teams are dynamic. They all did good last year, and they just get stronger. And this is why the AFC pummels the NFC every year, just because those organizations, they know what they're doing. They're doing a great thing. Philly's trying to do the same thing, but the AFC is just in its own class, I think.
I think right now the AFC has less teams with holes, probably because there's more franchise quarterbacks over there, to be fair. And I think they have a lot of really good GMs. Like, again, now that the Raiders have a good GM, the balance of the cosmos is off because
and the coaches in that division, they're all solid.
We'll see about Pete Carroll, but New England strengthened, New Jersey strengthened, right? Cleveland, I think, is kind of planned for next year. We'll see how they do, but I think Stefanski's a good coach. We'll see about Tennessee. Buffalo strengthened. KC strengthened. Denver strengthened. The AFC is going to be a gauntlet. There's 6 or 7 really good teams in the AFC, where in the NFC, I feel like a lot of teams didn't really move the bubble, and the ones that were, Carolina, right? Atlanta, New Orleans, San Francisco maybe helped themselves a little bit.
They had a lot of holes.
Yeah, and it's like I don't see any of the NFC juggernauts like taking that next step. I don't think the Lions did a lot to help themselves, or the Vikings who won 14 games last year, right? And the Eagles did good, we agreed, but it was a little bit top heavy, and the Eagles didn't need a lot, so they don't need to strengthen that much. But yeah, teams like Green Bay, teams like Seattle, teams like Chicago that we wanted to see them get to that next level, I don't think really did a ton in this draft, at least this year, to move the needle. I think the AFC did a great job, or at least a couple of their divisions did a great job. And yeah, it was disappointing to see how poorly the NFC North did. Man, maybe we're just haters, but they didn't do that great. They just really
once
didn't.
the season starts, we might come back and revisit this because who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe Las Vegas might have had the best draft on paper, but maybe none of those players end up doing much. You never know.
I like it.
I think that
go ahead, Dave.
We'll revisit this in week 9 just to see, okay, here's what our free assumptions are, here as was now, and then we'll look at it again at the end of the season. Just, it's an iterative process. We'll keep this going. But for my friends who are Steelers fans, I implore you, Aaron Rodgers, look at this stat sheet. The AFC, they got even stronger. So for the love of Pete, leave the Steelers alone, go to the New Orleans Saints, and give the Steelers some hope for next year.
Yeah.
Don't muddy the waters, please.
That's going to be really fun in our next episode, guys. We're going to predict the standings. We're going to predict where teams finish, who makes the playoffs, who we think wins the Super Bowl. We're going to go through all of that in the next episode. Little preview for you guys. If Steelers sign Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to make them worse than what they are right now. So I'm just going to give you guys a heads up. But great episode. Great episode, Chief. Great episode, Hype. This was a hell of a lot of fun, like it always is. Thank you, everyone, for watching, friends, family, and new people. Like and subscribe. We're going to be here making content for a long time. We love football. We're just fools about it. So thank you again for joining us.
And if you have any comments, tell us who you think won the draft. Who was your team that you think was number 1? All right, guys. Well, guess what? That's episode 3 of Foosball.